Hello and welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Max Liu, and I'm a co-founder of the Dialogues on Asian Universities, DAU, together with three distinguished higher education leaders as the co-founders, Professor Daxuan Feng, Professor Dan Chai, and Professor Tony Chen, who will also serve as our moderator today. Today, this conversation marks the 11th dialogue in our series since DAU's inception in 2020. And we are heartened to see DAU becoming a valuable window through which people around the world gain insights into the evolution of higher education in Asia. Today's discussion topic could not be more timely and relevant. We'll be talking about the tectonic shift in global talent chain against the backdrop of historic technological disruption and unprecedented geopolitical turbulences. And we're honored to be joined by two extraordinary panelists, whom Professor Chen will introduce their name shortly. Before we begin, a quick note on today's logistics. The dialogue will run for 90 minutes. And many of you, I see many familiar names. So you've been to a previous DAU before, so you know this. We'll begin by having our panelists share their brief remarks. And then we'll follow by a moderated discussion led by Tony. It's about 30 minutes. We'll then dedicate the last chunk of our dialogues to audience Q&A. And throughout the whole dialogue, starting now, you're invited to post your questions using Zoom's chat function. And we'll be monitoring it closely and try to address as many of them as we can. And I also want to just personally thank Professor Tony Chen before we get started on this discussion. So Tony, he was born and raised in Hong Kong. He got his degree from Caltech and PhD from Stanford, and then went on to lead UCLA's math department and division of physical sciences for many years before co-founding the US National Science Foundation's National Mathematics Institute. And as we all know, he later returned to Asia to serve for many years, both serving as the president of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and most recently as the president of the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, until last year. And even today, he's still sitting on probably half a dozen or a dozen advisory boards of numerous leading universities across Asia. So I think he is arguably one of the most fitting academic leaders to guide us through today's topic. And with that, let me now hand the virtual mic to Tony to introduce our topic today, and then also our panelists to kick off the dialogue.
Thank you, Max, for the kind introduction. Welcome everybody who take time to sign on this DAU. My job is the moderator, so I want to, in this introduction, I want to sort of touch on 3 parts. One is sort of the topics again. Second, I want to introduce the two panelists, and third, I want to give sort of some framing remarks to help to guide our discussion later on. Okay, so that's the idea. Then I'll pass it on to each of the panelists to introduce themselves more fully, and also to give 2 or 3 minutes opening remarks on the topic themselves before we launch into sort of a moderated discussion. So the topic, to repeat, I mean, the exact title is The Tectonic Shift in the Global Talent Chain, the Forces of Technology and Geopolitics. So my take is, the focus is on talent, okay? The talent chain or talent flow, okay? So this is what we want to focus on. The title says there's a tectonic shift, so we want to focus on that. You may or may not agree with that, but I certainly believe that's the case. And the two areas we want to focus on, basically 2 themes for the discussion. One is technology, and by that, the obvious things are AI, and other related fields. There are many. So let's just say AI. And related to that is also the role between academia and industry. As you know, AI has been, the leadership. I would say industry is taking a big lead. They have a lot of resources. They can recruit a lot of talents from around, the whole world, from academia and from other industries. So that's one topic we're going to be talking about geopolitics, obviously, because talents, especially in the technology field, it's global. They go every which way. Okay. So with that in mind, I think I'm very grateful. We speaking for DAO, DAU, we can get two more prominent, experienced panelists as we have today. Together, they cover many dimensions. They cover geographical dimension. You hear, one is from India, another one is from China now. They're leading top institution in those countries. We'll see here a little bit later. They are still young, but old enough to experience a lot of ups and downs in the topic. I think that's important. Okay, so I think they can speak from personal experience. I think collectively they have not only been in academia, been professors themselves, sometimes more than one institution, and they also have served a leadership role in major industries across different countries, different regions of the world. So together, this is very relevant topic. We can't get any two panelists better than this. Okay. So maybe I can introduce the two panelists quickly before I launch into my framing remarks. Let me start with Professor Banerjee, Rangan Banerjee. He's now the director of the IIT, Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. As you know, IIT is one of the most prominent institutions in India for sure, but in the world, I would say. I think many of the world's leading technology companies are run by alumni of IIT, so that's for sure. Before that, or maybe concurrently, Rangan, you should introduce yourself. He was also the director of the IIT at Mumbai. So director, by the way, my interpretation is like president. Okay, when I say director. Rangan is formerly a mechanical engineer, but his expertise is in the energy field, both in terms of research, but also in terms of policy and so on. So that's my rough introduction to Rangan. Okay. Professor Zhang, I call him Ya-qin. I've known Ya-qin a little bit before. He is right now at Tsinghua University. He's a faculty member there, but he also founded and leading research institute called AI in Industry and Research. I mean, maybe you can explain better, okay? But AI, industry, and research, because that's very relevant to our topic today. Before that, he was the chairman or president at Baidu. Many of you know, sometimes it's unfair, but people say Baidu is the Google of China. That's unfair. Baidu is Baidu. Okay. And before that, he was working for Microsoft all over the world. Last job before Baidu was in Redmond. He was the senior VP. And he was also the head of the Microsoft Research Asia in Beijing for a number of years. I think I first met him during that time. So he's very familiar with cooperation, with American technology and innovation system. And of course, now he's in Tsinghua and in Beijing. So he's also familiar with that. So I hope you agree with me. If we can get two people, at least collectively, they cover most of the important topics that I'm personally interested to find out. So now let me give sort of framing my own remarks. Okay, it's not my precision; it's just remarks for framing the discussion going forward. So let me take up the first theme first, which is technology. And let me just focus on AI. There are many others. Okay, but AI seems to be the hottest topic. Now, if you take AI, just like any other technology at its nascent state, it's obviously a very powerful tool that we all want to use. I have ChatGPT and DeepSeek basically with me every minute. It's on my phone. Okay, I actually use it. It will affect a lot of jobs. It will displace some existing jobs. It probably will create some new ones, just like any technology. I mean, many call this the next industrial revolution and beyond and more. I think that's the idea. But there's also a lot of hype to go with it. People are worried that think that we'll take over the world. If we can write such great prose, you can solve cancer. You can cure cancer. That's sort of the very natural conclusion. And there's a lot of fear in terms of how technology will run us much more than, say, the computer or electricity, right, or steam engine had done in previous industrial revolutions. Now, going beyond, there's also fear that computers will become so intelligent, it will supersede human beings. Now, you can take your own position. I'm a little bit skeptical about that, at least in the short term. Now, when we come back to talent, so how this is so all-encompassing in any country, any society. There are many questions around talent in this respect. Where do the talents come from? How do you nurture them? How do you make sure that when you nurture them, that when they come out, when they graduate, that the job market, the industry will actually find what they have learned useful? How do you avoid a situation where industry goes into academia and sort of hire everybody, the professor, including the student before they graduate, okay? And then because they will cut off the seed corn, right? That's also the worry. How can academia, for example, collaborate rather than compete, because industry has much deeper pocket and much wider reach? I think that's some of the idea. And how do we teach? You're talking about academia, right? What do we teach? Certainly, it's not just transmittal of knowledge, because you can, by a few keystrokes on some of these systems, you can get what you want, okay? So it has to be something else. Maybe learn how to be a critical thinker, for example. I mean, that's maybe one issue, okay? Anyway, that's the first topic. The second topic is related to the tectonic shift caused by geopolitics. Actually, as we speak, big events are happening around the world, so I don't have to tell you what it is. It may not, at first glance, has anything to do with talent, flow, but I think it will, but it's too early to tell, okay? But even with the existing thing that we have seen, let me just use the United States as an example, because that's where I live. That's most of my career is there. Just in the last 6 months, okay, you heard that the U.S. administration is trying to stop Harvard University from admitting all international students. Okay. By the way, Max is at Harvard. Okay. So that's very real. The Secretary of State has announced that he wants to aggressively revoke or investigate all visa given to Chinese students. I don't know where we are on that, but that's what he said maybe a month ago. The Nature magazine, you know, the preeminent publication in science, did a survey. I don't know, something like 2,000 research scientists in the US, and asked them, what about this research funding cuts, you know, in NIH, the National Institute of Health, and the National Science Foundation and beyond? How does that affect you? I think if I remember the statistic from Nature, is 75% of them said they're considering leaving. That's very alarming to me. Okay, sitting where I am. I mean, these are all, by the way, this is not nationality. It could be Indian student, it could be Chinese student, it could be American student or postdocs. Okay, so that's pretty alarming. Then, of course, we all know, especially in AI, in some of these sensitive dual-use technology, there's a lot of sensitivity in terms of export control, sanctioning, you know, technology, and all that. These are just things that happen. Basically, it's ongoing, it's evolving. So in a way, there's both, in terms of talent flow, there's a push factor, because depending on which category of student you are in, you feel uncertain, and so on. So it affects where you want to go. There's also a pull factor, right? Because most talent want to go where their talents will be realized, where the rewards are. So as the world evolves in terms of these leaderships, talent will affect where people will go. So that's, to me, that's where the talent flow comes in. Okay, so that's the end of my framing questions. Let me turn to Professor Banerjee. Can you use 2 or 3 minutes to sort of respond to some of these topics, and then we go into the discussion.
Thank you, Tony, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're from. So let me just quickly try to respond. Tectonic shift in the global talent chain. Now, whether it is tectonic or not, definitely there is a shift. And we are looking at it. This is a dialogue on Asian universities. What does it mean for Asian universities? So one of the things that we need to understand is that Asia is 60% of the world's population. And if you look at the higher education, if you look at the numbers of students in the US, you'll find that it's India, China, and Asia. Predominantly, some of the best students in the US are coming from Asia. And given the two things which we talk about, technology and geopolitics, very clearly, things are changing. And the two drivers identified, both technology and geopolitics. Technology does not respect national boundaries. So technology, you could be anywhere in the world and you can make an innovation and it can have an impact. But however, the way things are happening, increasingly, we are all putting walls around ourselves because I think there are a lot of challenges. There's a whole trend of globalization where now you have companies, global companies, which are sort of capturing the market, and you are having large aggregate businesses in different parts of the world. However, this whole issue of demand, supply, business, geopolitics is resulting in a change in the way in which universities must respond. And in India and in Asia, many universities and higher educational institutions have come of age. And many of us in the IIT system, we had a decade back or 10, 15 years back, a large chunk of majority of our students, our good students, would go to the US or to Europe for higher education. That trend has changed. And that trend has changed for the IITs. Today, it is just about 10% of our students who are leaving the country for higher education. Most of the people are taking up jobs, some of them international jobs, and also we are seeing a trend for innovation and startups. And then there is a booming startup ecosystem. So that is one change in the trend. The second important thing in the Indian context is that we have our industry with a new confidence, and we are trying to look at having self-reliance. In India, we call it Atmanirbhar, becoming Atmanirbhar, and Viksit, meaning developed. So the idea is to have our own technology and also have leadership in technology areas. And this means that we need to be able to nurture our own talent pool. We need to also be able to attract international students. Now, the problem in our case is that we have so many good young Indian students, and the selectivity to get into the IIT is very, very high. It's like, less than 1% of the students who wish to get into IIT at the undergraduate level actually manage to qualify. So we do have a lot of young students. We have an untapped demand. We have a business and an industry. So this is where we can actually try to create higher educational institutions in Asia for nurturing and actually capturing the talent pool, which will create a competitive advantage through technology. And I think the geopolitics are such that this is the right time for Asian universities to actually play a leading role in nurturing the talent pool and finding solutions to the world's problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'll stop here.
Thank you. I want to come back to you at the discussion. You raised many interesting points. Ya-qin, your turn.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Max, Tony, for inviting me to join this, talk about this critically important and certainly very timely topic. And also Tony for the very kind introduction. In the last 30 years, I've been very fortunate to work in both US and China, roughly half and a half. And as an individual researcher, as a corporate leader, and also as a professor. I guess I will make three remarks, three observations in terms of how talent evolved in the last, I would say, 25 years in China, especially in AI and computer science, based on my personal observation and experiences. First is just the talent caliber, evolution of the talent caliber. When Kai-Fu, myself, and a few friends started Microsoft Research in the Beijing lab. Now it's Microsoft Research Asia. Back 25 years ago, when I was early 1999, we were able to get the very best talents, computer science talent from China. And, the PhD students, but, it was obvious they were really good. They're good as the raw talents. But if you look at their dissertation, look at their research, was very bad, very, very candid. It was very simple because, their professors back then in China were not doing state-of-art research, and the student were not trained to do the best research. So we had to tell them how to research, how to write papers, how to publish, how to interact with the rest of the world. And the benefit is, we had about a dozen top-tier scientists from US who are actually at the frontier of the computer science. So we were able to work with this, the young PhDs to bring them up to date. So that was, obviously back then, 25 years ago. Today, when I look at the talents in the Tsinghua University, and I look at the engineers at the top, the Chinese companies like Baidu, I used to run, very different. They're as good as the very best students and engineers in any other universities or any other companies. I mean, they know how to do research first. They know how to find the right topic. They know how to publish papers. And if you look at the results, especially AI, probably 40% of the contribution research coming from China, and patent probably even more. So that is, so over the last 25 years, the talent, whether it's from university, the students, the faculties, and also the engineers in universities, in companies, are on par with the very best in the world. The second thing is the shift of the talents. 25 years ago, the best students went to US, went to Europe, mainly US, to get their PhDs, so to find jobs. A lot of them, returned out of the state. And the faculties were mostly educated in China, I would say 25 years ago. That's, and if you look at right now, most of the faculties at Tsinghua actually have PhDs from US and from the rest of the world. And also the best students choose to stay in China, especially in the last 5 years. I would see 90% of the top 20% students in computer science and Tsinghua stayed within China. And also, if you look at the young faculties we hired last year, this year, they mostly got their PhD from within China. I see that's a major shift. The third I want to emphasize here, and also every occasion I have, is the benefit of talent globalization. Right? And if you look at all the things that China is certainly a major beneficiary of globalization, but also same thing for US, same thing for India, same thing for the rest of the world. And I was in California about 2 months ago when I visited the top of probably 5 or 6 companies in AI, and I walked around the floor of OpenAI, Meta, and NVIDIA. I will see a large portion of the engineers they're working from China, from India, and those are the people. And Tony, you had read an article about just the talent shift. They got their degrees from China, and then they went to work for global companies, and a lot of them stayed in the US. But also want to make a point that the Chinese scientists and the Chinese engineers are making a lot of contribution to AI in the world. Let me just give you one example. There are 4 young researchers, young scientists in their 20s. They were PhD students and different Chinese universities. They joined the Microsoft Research Lab in Beijing, and they published an iconic paper, which is foundational to what we do today, the big models. The paper is the residual neural nets, called ResNets. It is actually, by the way, the highest cited paper ever, right? Not only in computer science, but also in all the papers in almost 300,000 times just that one paper. But those 4 kids, they got their PhDs from Chinese universities, from the University of Science of China, from Tsinghua, from Chinese University of Hong Kong, from Xianzhou University. And the lead author, He Kaiming, afterwards went to US and joined the Meta affair, the Facebook AI research, and continued to make contribution. And now he's a faculty at MIT. And the other 3, stayed in China, in Chinese companies and universities. So and I see the talent globalization benefit China, but also benefit the US, and benefit. And the other example is DeepSeek. Right? DeepSeek, it's open source. It's a algorithm that's being used by a lot of companies and a lot of people around the world, and it's developed by 100 young kids in China, and a number of those guys actually are from my own institute. So I do see a increasing benefits of globalization, and we need to keep that. I make those 3 brief remarks, and then we can talk more about other things as we go on the technology and other things. Yeah.
Thank you. So let's officially launch into the discussion. By the way, the 3 of us can ask each other questions. I, as moderator, I guess have a prerogative to ask some questions first. First of all, I'm fascinated by what I've learned from both of you. This talent flow changed from 90% going from your country to US to now completely flipped in the last few years. That's what I understand. And this is pretty dramatic. I don't know what it is. I think, Rangan, you seem to indicate that because there are a lot of opportunities elsewhere, including in India. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What's India doing in terms of nurturing this innovation technology ecosystem? I've heard that India now is really completely upgrading its information IT infrastructure. This is what I heard from business people that I know. They say, you should go there and take a look. So can you say a little bit about what India is doing? And then, of course, how the IITs, you're a pretty important part of the Indian society. How do you respond? And then how do the people, the talent respond? They have choices? Is it because the pull, as I said earlier? Okay. Or is there any push factor? Can you comment on that particular issue? Thank you.
Let me, first of all, let me just correct one of the things. When I talked about 90 and 10, that is from the IITs. Overall, from India, number of students going to the US is actually on a growth path. It's just that they are going from the second tier institutions. The IIT students themselves are opting after their graduation, when they do their BTech, many of them are actually opting for company jobs, and some of them are picked up by global companies. So to answer the second part of your question, I think whether it's a pull or a push, there are number of opportunities. The Indian economy is growing at a fairly high rate. There is significant, significant push for innovation and startups, and so there is a big, there's a big boom in terms of people trying to run with their own ideas and then making that work. And this is something which has created a lot of excitement on campuses. So that is one. Second thing is many of the industries and even global companies are partnering and providing opportunities for students. So this is something which we are seeing. So I think it is also, it's a pull factor in terms of there are hubs where there is a lot of innovation, there's a lot of startup activity, there's a lot of R&D. So the initial model used to be that most of the good students would go abroad for higher studies, then take up a job, and then some of them would come back or not. And now often what is happening is people are exiting after they become an engineer, then they take up a job, then they decide. Some of them do come back later on for higher studies, but the proportion, at least for IIT students who are going for higher studies immediately, has actually declined very significantly.
Well, that's pretty.
Also, I think there is, people do feel that in many of the domains, you can actually make a difference, and you can have an industry or a business, and then that can work. And so there are these opportunities also quite significantly. So it's about 10 to 12% of our students, undergraduates, directly after their graduation actually go into a startup or work with a startup, which is a fairly large number.
Yeah, that's pretty striking. It's tied to what Ya-qin mentioned, right? I say when you walk the halls of the, in Silicon Valley, most of the people you meet are Indians or Chinese. Now, if this trend that Rangan you mentioned continues, then what you meet there in 10 years' time will be very different. So we all know, for example, Indian Americans are very, very successful in leading tech, right? Look at Microsoft, look at Google, many, many other things. Wouldn't those continue to be role models for Indian students, Rangan? Maybe the world has changed.
I think there are two parts of it. What Ya-qin mentioned about the benefits of globalization and of seeing different cultures and different ways in which things can be done. I think that is definitely that is a benefit which should continue. It's not like we would like to put up walls and become insular, but I feel that a lot more of Indian students are setting their targets on doing something within the country, whether it is after getting a higher education or doing something here. And I think this is something which is this is encouraging for our higher educational institutions. And as I also mentioned, that a large fraction of our faculty do have global exposure. I mean, almost all of the faculty, either they have done their PhDs from good universities globally, or they've done postdoctoral stints. So the challenge basically is to see that, how do we create opportunities and challenges with, and you talked about this, the industry academia interface, to make that more effective, so that students can work on engaging and challenging problems along with industry, and can see that what they do actually makes a bigger impact.
Ya-qin, let me turn to you. Same question, but I suspect the environment is a little bit different. For the push and pull factors, probably a little different for students from China or faculty. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think first, it's just the opportunities in China, right? Obviously, there are big techs like Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, ByteDance, Huawei. All these companies create a huge number of opportunities, and they are also in the frontier of the tech industry. Obviously, there are a lot of new startups in AI that continue to pull people, to draw people. The second thing is, if you look at the universities, and Tsinghua, I think we provide some of the best environment in terms of just to do top academic work, to have the opportunity to work with top industries, and also to interact with the rest of the world. The other thing, of course, there's a geopolitical issue. It's harder for Chinese top students to get a visa.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier.
So that's right. So there are different issues. But overall, because China itself is a huge market, and it's a magnet for talents. But having said that, I think students to get some global experience is still very important. So I do send my PhD students to spend probably 6 months or even a year outside of China, especially US, just to learn how to work with other students, to work with other universities, and to get the diversity in culture, to gain confidence, to have that global exposure and the vision. So again, it is important to have that interaction and exposure.
Ya-qin, let me ask you next. The same question applied to Rangan, right? So this is the pull factor for the student from your countries, right? Mm-hmm. But can it be extended to international talents, as mentioned before? Can each of your ecosystem attract non-Indian, non-Chinese students to come, so that maybe 10 years from now, you walk the halls in Baidu, you see a lot of non-Chinese, you see a lot of Indians and maybe American students there. Is that possible in your view? Maybe it's already happening.
Yeah, I start with China. I think it is certainly possible. And right now, a vast majority of our international talents are the Chinese talents, ethnically Chinese talents. We do encourage people from other countries to come to China. In fact, in my own institute, I have probably, I would say, 5% of non-ethnically Chinese who doesn't speak English. But overall, we are not at an ideal state to have international talents yet. It's changing, but still, most people speak. Most people don't speak English, right? And there's a very strong, cultural inclination this way. Companies a little bit easier. Universities, I think we have a lot of students and undergraduate students, but I think right now vastly mainly Chinese students. In the longer term, 5 years, 10 years, I do see Tsinghua will be very global. Yeah.
Okay. Rangan, so English language is not a problem in India, I suppose, especially for the educated. So do you see, and as you said, there's so much opportunity. Do you see that India can attract sort of international talents to go? You say IIT can have, can be like MIT, right? You can have 25% international students. Is that possible?
So I think there is a goal to increase the international students in the Indian context. The challenge is that we in the IITs, at least at the undergraduate level, we are able to cater to only a small proportion of our students. So it's less than 1% of the students who wish to get into IITs can actually qualify. And so if I increase a large number of international students, it means that I would be able to cater to a smaller cohort of Indian students. So at the undergraduate level, that is a problem for the IITs. At the postgraduate level, at the master's and the PhD, we are keen to attract a number of international students. We do have a few examples. They're relatively small. I mean, we have a master's program funded by the International Solar Alliance, where we have the cohort of 20 students from 20 different countries, mostly from developing countries, and it's a master's program. We have actually set up a campus in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, in collaboration between the two governments. And in that, we are also focusing on computer science, AI, energy sustainability. And so we've gone beyond our shores, and there we are looking at also catering to the Emirati population. And we do believe that, so the straight answer to the question, yes, there'll be more international students, but I think predominantly until we are able to scale the number of high quality higher educational institutions, the proportion of international students, it's not going to become like the US universities with like 25, 30% of it. That's unlikely.
Let me
but
ask
it
Ya-qin.
is going to be it's going to be a larger cohort, definitely. And we do have, I mean, we are trying to attract international faculty, not been very successful because we don't have the Indian salaries are not as competitive but we do have a few. And I think that's going to, so we will have a flavor, and we have strategic alliances, we have joint PhD programs, so we will have our campus be more international, but it will be still predominantly. And the other thing is, if you look at India, our students come from all parts of the country. So there is a lot of diversity even within the country. In terms of regions, in terms of language, in terms of economic background. So, of course, one can think in terms of an international diversity. So this is sort of the challenge. But going forward 5-10 years down the line, we would see more international students. Yes,
we will have Dow 45. We'll come back to this.
Right. So let me add a point to Rangan's remark. Yeah,
but I want to Ya-qin.
Yeah. As IIT attract the top minds from India. Tsinghua attract the very best students, best engineering students from China, and to get to Tsinghua in China is very hard. You have to pass the national entrance exam with the very best in each different province. It's extremely hard. We don't want to compromise that standard when we admit international students. We do have all English curriculum that as target for international students, but I will see, it will take some time for us to get where
Are
the
you
US
saying, Ya-qin, that
universities.
the international student will not pass that standard?
No, we want them to pass the standard, but it will be different type of exam. That's right, different kind of exam. What I mean is, I don't see 25%, 30% of the student from other countries, because I don't think we have that many students who can pass the exam, but also willing to come to China. So in the longer term, will be probably different. We do have the privilege of attracting some top faculties, from US. More recently, Charles Lieber from Harvard, he joined our faculty, and he's one of the leading scientists in material nanotechnology. And we also have a professor who got a field medalist, part of a math department. So we have attracted some top academic leaders, and more faculty than students. But we're getting there. Yeah.
One question I want to pose to both of you, but I think particularly probably relevant to China in AI, because I remember reading the book by Kai-Fu Lee, your predecessor at MSRA, right? The AI superpower. It was referring to US and China. That was like almost 10 years ago, this book. But today you mentioned DeepSeek, and so on. From the outside, I look at China, it's like that's a hotbed of AI innovation. And not just in research, right, in papers that you mentioned, but also in terms of enterprises, companies, startups.
Right.
So now, what about entrepreneurs? If I were a young person, anywhere, from US, from Scandinavia, from Africa, I want to go to a place, go to an ecosystem where I have the best chance to realize my dream and obtain some financial report, make a startup, get into a big market. Wouldn't China have a shot at that? Not just as students. Do you see that going? China can attract, and India too, but China first, let's say. Attract this,
obviously China, is is very active in terms of developing all the different models, and have some of the models on par with the US models. Obviously, China, if you compare AI in China and the US, in terms of the chips, the silicons, US is way ahead. In terms of the models, the software, the model, China is close, especially with more efficient models like DeepSeek and the Queen. And in terms of application, China is probably a little bit ahead, especially not only for consumers, but also for industrial AIs, whether it's autonomous driving or it's manufacturing, transportation, or healthcare. Can China attract global talent to work in China industry? I think yes, but again, it's similar to universities. Chinese companies, including Baidu, the company I used to run. We had 45,000 people. I would say maybe 1,000 coming from other countries. So there's still a cultural thing, but going global, there will be more opportunities. And also Chinese companies are going global, and they have different branches, offices in other countries. I think it will be probably easier for the global talent to join those countries.
I'm seeing some of them in the Middle East when I was at KAUST.
That's right, exactly, in the Middle East. And even you look at in the US, you look at the App Store, I think 4 of the top 10 apps coming from China, including TikTok. So I think there's a lot of global opportunities for people outside of China as well.
Yeah, Rangan, what about India from this respect? Attracting entrepreneurs. As you said, there's so many startups, not just for Indians.
Yes, I think entrepreneurs, and we have serial entrepreneurs, we have startups, we have now we have venture capital firms, and even we are looking at quantum, we are looking at AI, and of course the competition is China and the US. But I think there are a number of and there are companies TCS, Infosys, a number of the medium and larger companies who have also gone global and have had strategic alliances. So I think it is a space which has a lot of opportunity, and it is driven by innovation, research, and ideas, and young people are at the helm of many of these. So I think this is the talent pool, the technology, and then linking it up with applications. I think that's extremely important. So we've seen finance, healthcare, infrastructure. All of these are places where where you look at intelligence, you look at apps, you can create things, and then because finally, I mean, I think a lot of some of this is, of course, there is a concern in terms of jobs and the nature of jobs and the future of work. But the fact remains that there are several problems facing the world, and that needs an understanding of the reality of the problem itself, and it's human intelligence coupled with AI which will find the solutions, right? So I think there's a lot of technological optimism which sort of says that we'll get the latest things and all problems will be problems of the past, but history doesn't sort of bear that out.
Yes. Not that simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask one last topic on the AI technology aspect before we move into the second theme, and that is, of course, how AI impacts the education of talents. Right? I think both of you are in academic institutions, so that's a very relevant question. You already mentioned both in terms of the startups and the student talent flow. I think Ya-qin in particular, maybe Ya-qin, you can address this relationship between academia and industry. We have seen this play before. I remember robotics. Some companies sort of went to Carnegie Mellon University and hired everybody in robotics, faculty, student. Okay, then people are saying, well, where are we going to train this next generation of talents? Do you see that happening? Because as you said, the academia, no matter what they try, even the richest, even Harvard cannot have the resources to build all this big data center that, OpenAI can. Let me put it that way. Maybe Ya-qin, you can address that a little bit. How does it impact the university, your institute?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, this whole AI is really changing how we teach as university. So what Tsinghua is doing is going to have a complete new set of curriculum, actually 160 different new courses targeted for AI and also for interdisciplinary areas, like AI for biology, for manufacturing, for transportation, automotives, finance, so in this interdisciplinary areas. So that is the curriculum. We also created what we call the AI professor, AI assistant. For every class, you will have AI as part of its assistant to, of course, professors. We're not getting rid of professors.
Not TA, not teaching assistant. AI assistant.
Like a teaching, that's right, AI assistant. That student can interact with to personalize the learning. In terms of industry collaboration, you correctly pointed out that a lot of the innovation actually coming from industry in the last, especially last 10 years, because of a huge number of GPUs. They have a lot of the scenarios, a lot of data. So obviously, university cannot and I should not compete with industry. So the things we did, especially that's the reason why I started the AIR, we call it AIR, the AI industry research at Tsinghua, is to build an environment to work very closely with industries. So we established about a dozen joint laboratories with companies like Baidu, Alibaba, ByteDance, BYD, and so our students, the faculties, can work with the companies very, very closely.
Joint appointments? Do you have joint appointments?
We don't. I'm against the joint appointment. Okay. I see a bit about that. Yeah. So essentially, our students, faculty can work with them in this joint labs. And obviously, we have about 200 our own GPUs just for pure research. But for the resource, the data, that will come from those companies. Right? So, and I think it's good for student faculties because they are part of the mainstream innovation. Yeah, look at the ones, the DeepSeek, the R1s. Look at the Queen 3.0. It all has contribution from our students and the faculties. So they actually really proud of that. And also students who graduate can join the workforce very naturally. The other thing is, in order to do that, we need our faculties to have dual experiences. Right? Right now, I actually hired all the faculties, 23 of them, now 25, to join the next few weeks. And most of them, 70% of them, having industrial experience. Some of them actually used to run research labs, like Wen Yumar, who was the CTO of ByteDance, Feng Zhao was the CTO of Hire. So most of our senior faculties, they used to run, the technology team or research labs of large companies. At the same time, they are top academics because they are tenure professors, so they have to, publish papers. They have to, the frontier of this, of research. And I think that's a great way to educate our students. Our students, they are taught, mentored by people with the dual experiences, and also a real contribution. Okay, let me tell you why I'm against the joint appointment of industry and university. I know, there are a few cases in US, they're jointly appointed, like Google's, Cornell, and a few Stanford.
Yeah, Meta, Jeff
first
Hinton with Google,
Right. Well, no, Jeff Hinton actually he was full-time.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and then he was a full-time scientist at Google. The first reason is I think it's really hard for people to do two things. It's hard for people to do one thing well. Right? So I always like to focus. So even if I run a company, if I work for a company, I work for the company. If I work for a university, I work for a university, and we have different priorities. Obviously, when you work for a university, you want to work with industry because that's a lot of innovation come from. When you work for industry, you want to get the best talent from and ideas from university. So, but I don't think it works. It's very complex for those the people who do two things at the same time, and also it's very hard for universities to manage that IPs all the time. It might be okay for a few Turing recipients or Nobel laureates, but certainly not the norm for universities or industry. So I'm actually opposed to that. And I was sitting on a advisory board of Columbia Engineering and Cornell, and I personally actually I was not a big fan of that. Having said that, it is important to for as I mentioned, students, faculty to work with industry very, very close. And also some of our courses are taught by leading industry technologists who have a front hands-on experience, and so that is important. Yeah, and we do have that. Some of the courses are taught, or lectures are being taught.
Country or ecosystem and figure this out, the right balance. Who really have
That's right. And also we encourage our faculties to contribute to startups, right? And most of the cases, I don't encourage them to fund lead companies, because most professors are good, but they're not good CEOs. They will develop the right technology that run by others, and they can contribute. But if for like the 1% who are good at leading companies and also doing research, if you want to do company, you can take a leave of absence just to focus on the company, right? Maybe one day you'll come back or not, but I don't encourage professors to to lead companies as CEOs, at the same time being a tenured full-time faculty at universities.
Yeah, I think as I said, whichever country can figure out the right balance, between industry and academia, will have a big head start. Tony,
I just find myself hard to do one thing well.
I agree with you.
We don't have a lot of Elon Musk.
Rangan, you probably know hard enough to do that job, and also have an academic job. I want to, we are into our last 30 minutes. Okay, so in principle,
can I just respond to that question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I think we also at IIT Delhi, we've just revamped our entire curriculum, and we want to make sure that every student who goes through IIT Delhi, whether it is for engineering or for science, has actually done some curriculum on AI. We've also looked at whether it's a civil engineering, each curriculum itself also has embedded in it the latest developments of AI for that particular domain. So we also created a set of guidelines overall for what is ethical use of AI in education. And I think that's also a tricky thing, in terms of how should students use AI, what is allowed, what is not allowed. Similarly for faculty members, we have created we have a school of artificial intelligence which is cutting across all disciplines, which is funded by our alumnus. It's called the Ya-qin School of AI, and we have a master's program in that. We also have with many links with industry for projects. And we have an AI accelerator funded with Microsoft, which is for startups, not just from IIT Delhi, but for the region itself. So we partnered with a leading medical college. We don't have a medical school, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and we've got the National Center of AI for Healthcare. So we are looking at ways in which we have a shortage of doctors and technical staff for the entire population. So we are looking at using AI to have affordable healthcare, and that's a new center that we have just started. So there are, I think, a large number of opportunities. We are trying to partner with industry. Some of the industry are co-located at IIT Delhi, and we see that it has to be something in terms of a partnership. We have a model where we have professors of practice from industry. We don't have joint appointments with industry, but we do encourage our faculty members to spend time in industry. And,
very interesting, because it looks like both of you and your institution are responding to it in your way. Many things in common, but some are adapted to your own system. But let me move to the second topic, okay, on the tectonic shift caused by geopolitics. Now, in a way, we have covered a lot of it already. We talk about the push and pull. We talk about many of these factors. But let me single out two topics that we haven't really touched on yet, okay? One is, we mentioned about visa and, all this stuff. Now, one is, of course, they present a procedural hurdle. If you're a student sitting in Delhi, you want to go to MIT, you cannot get the visa from Beijing. You cannot get the visa, you cannot go. That's one topic. But my question is there a deeper, longer-term effect, a more psychological effect? Because if you go, you don't know, maybe after 1 year, you find out you're in some crazy political situation. Does that, from what you know about your student, is that a factor at all? The uncertainty, is that a factor? So that's number one. You can answer them in any sequence. The second question about this is not just students. These more mature talents, say from India and China, they've been in the US for some time, either for the push factor, maybe I should say, or the pull factor. Are there a lot of returnees? Someone who developed their careers. I know in China, I think Ya-qin, you're already talking about, there are a lot of, senior returnees or mid-career returnees, not just students who graduate. So those are the 2 points I want to ask. Is it a psychological factor in terms of these political factors? And is that are there you're seeing a lot of returnees coming back to your own country? So maybe Ya-qin, can you make a comment on that? Because Rajan just commented. And then I'll switch to you, Rajan.
Right. Certainly, yes. When I ask, for example, students, the top students at the Tsinghua computer science, why they choose to stay in China, for example, to do a PhD with myself, and they give me kind of three reasons. One of the reasons is the uncertainty of visa or all the issues they face, and they prefer to make a clear decision and understand they can get the same best mentorship and academic environment, and without that uncertainty. Faculty is too. I see a lot of increasing application applicants from top U.S. schools. They receive their PhDs. Lots of them, wants to return to apply for faculty and also industries. I think they have to do with the uncertainty in their future academic career, or with right now the decrease in the National Science Foundation and some funding, of the funding, so will become a lot more competitive. At the same time, China is increasing the funding for basic science, for technology. So naturally will get more resources, opportunities here in China.
Okay.
So I think that those have to do with some of that shift.
Rajan,
again, having said that, I do encourage my students to spend some time in the U.S. and Europe to have to gain that global horizon, which I think is critically important.
Right, Rangan, can you comment in particular on the returnee issue, but the psychological issue as well?
Yeah, I think on both, the uncertainty and the perception and the reality and the lag. This is still early days, but I think there is a perception of uncertainty. And we do see definitely, and there are two things in terms of returnees. One is this kind of uncertainty, but the opportunities for jobs. And we've been seeing over the last decade, even before the current administration and the kind of things, there are many reasonably good researchers who are willing to come back and are thinking of relocating either to companies or because it's not necessarily a push, but it's a pull, because you can see there are opportunities, and then there are people who sort of spend 6 months in the US and 6 months in India, and then they're spending time in Bangalore, and then they're doing something, they're advising a company. So I think this trend is something which had already started, and it was not, and then the psychological perceptions, etc. We are definitely seeing much more interest in terms of faculty and research positions coming in. So it's still early days, and I think we have to wait and see, because finally it's the overall ecosystem and a university is something where we leave our faculty members alone to do we give them the freedom to do their education and research, and that is something that people value. And this, coupled with stronger industry links, could be a way in which we are able to attract more of the returnees, if we can do that. And even in our context, the government is trying to increase research funding and having more opportunities for research. So I think the timing is right for the Asian universities to actually think in terms of attracting the talent pool and providing leadership in some of these critical areas.
And also let me add, that the Chinese companies are also increasingly willing to fund long-term research, which is an additional source of funding. Now, for example, the institute I started 5 years ago, we have almost $200 million, right, from companies that they're willing to invest long-term and doing some of the foundational research. And 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that would not be possible. And right now, they just they want to work with the top minds and top universities to advance the research technology. So that's additional opportunity that good for returnees and also, of course, good for the people here.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes left for the question from the floor. And there are some questions on the chat room. Please feel free to put there. And also, Max has collected some questions through him direct. So maybe I take the opportunity and go through some of these. Okay, so let me start with the pre-collected one because we'll just read them out in the order that they are received. I think we may have time. Any one of you can do it. So the first one is to Professor Banerjee. Thank you for the interesting discussion. What is driving the increase in startup in India? How do you see India can grow this further? How university can promote this without getting into a bandwagon kind of situation, given that universities are expected to last longer than industry? I think in a way you already answered that a little bit, but do you have a fresh take on this?
Yeah, I think, there are many role models where we've seen our students doing startups and being successful. And we also have a mechanism now where we have a venture studio where some of these startups as well as the VCs are coming and talking to the students. So we see an ecosystem. Many of the rules and regulations related to startups have been relaxed. And overall, there is an ecosystem where there are, you can talk to people who've done startups. Some have succeeded, some have failed. So I think this is something which is exciting for young people.
So here's another question for you. Because I think we refers to India's role in the AI shift. Okay, let me read it. How will India be impacted by this AI shift? What steps must it take to have a positive impact in this tectonic shift? This is coming from somebody from India. You already addressed it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in all of this, there has to be a sort of, there has to be a strategic partnership between the academia and the government and the industry. And in many of these, it's a question of whether you're looking at AI applications, whether you're looking at large language models, or you're looking at the hardware, the compute. We are trying to create an infrastructure with more compute available. And then we also need to see, I think the classic thing is we have to look at the applications and the interventions and see and look at responsible AI being directed. So I think India has we do want to play a bigger role. And of course, there's a global competition in this space. We need to have strategic partnerships, and we have to see how that maps out.
Well, thank you. So the next set of questions is about China and geopolitics. So Ya-qin, you may want to take it up, or if you don't want to answer, it's okay. I can see what I can also address some. So the first question is from someone from U.S. university, top university. I don't want to mention. How strong is China's talent pool in AI? Is China ahead of the U.S.? You had mentioned that. You said in application, China is actually ahead, but in hardware, China is behind, right? So can you expand on that?
Yeah, well, let me just look at also talent. The U.S. certainly has a much larger number of star talents, the pioneers and the top architects.
They're from around the world. Many of them are from around the world.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. China has a much larger number of younger talents. If you look at the number of talent, China is probably 5 times more than US, just because of population and because of people love to do computer science, love to do AI, and also Chinese culture has respect for STEM, for scientists, for scholars, for engineering, for technologists. In the US, a lot of the top talents, lawyers and the MBAs in finance. Most of the Chinese top talents go to engineering and science. So overall, I think it's just more the younger people. Right? Look at DeepSeek, 100 engineers. They all graduate within the last 5 years. It's lucky that most of the innovation from AI come probably in the last 5 years.
So that's so you're right. So in some, China is behind still. In others, maybe slightly ahead. That's what you right.
Right. That's right. In terms of talents, I think China is a little bit different. It's younger talents, a larger number.
In that sector, is ahead. Yeah.
That's right. In terms of number, yeah. And also, if you look at the AI as an industry, China is probably more open. And most of the Chinese companies is open source. Right? You look at the DeepSeek, look at the Queen, right? Queen from Alibaba, and so they advocate for open models, open weights, and also the models are overall more efficient because China doesn't have all this the frontier chips infrastructure. So people choose to develop smarter models.
You live in the US, right? You have a lot of
right.
This statement is actually quite striking. Probably most American not aware. You say China is more open in AI, right?
Right. China is more open.
US probably the other way around. But because open source, DeepSeek is open source. You're right. So
yeah, Alibaba. Most of the companies actually are open source.
Open source. Okay.
Yeah. In US, of course, Llama is open source, but most companies are not. Most companies are.
Let me go to finish the part on China. The one is actually a little bit, is outside the topic. But what are the reasons behind multiple shutdowns of U.S.-China co-op programs, like the Tsinghua, Michigan, where Shanghai Jiaotong, Pittsburgh, Tianjin, where Georgia Tech, and so on? I'm aware of those. You care to comment on that, or you can choose not to? Because I don't know whether you're familiar with those. Actually.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with exactly why, but I did notice lots of those joint programs, unfortunately, were shut down. I just don't have the inside information why that's the case.
Well, let me.
But for the ones I know, there's a pressure from US. So it's it's not China's choice.
Let me mention what I know. By the way, it's all open.
Right.
In many of these cases, in the Berkeley, Shenzhen, Tsinghua, Berkeley,
right. Tsinghua, yeah,
Tianjin,
that's right. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, but there are several of these. Okay, they are open letters that you can download from the web. From there's a Congress committee that sent out these letters. Okay, bipartisan, and you can read them. Basically, it's part of this, rivalry. In other words, it has to do with if you sanction AI chips, you can, this is sort of a natural follow-up. It's political. In other words, that's how I see it. Because those letters.
Yeah, I'm a globalist. I think most of us are.
But the reason, right? The question before. Questioner's question. You can go to the web and look up the original letter. They are like 2 or 3 pages long, and they outline the reason. They're asking the university, why are you having this campus? Why are you doing this? And then a few months later, they were closed. So I can only conclude that those questions have something to do with the reason they're closed. Yeah. But by the way, there's still a lot of open. A lot of them are still open. Like NYU Shanghai is open, for example. It's just
But I want to take this opportunity, Tony. Because this is a discussion within Asian university community. I do want to encourage Asian universities, right? collaborate a lot more. We want to work with the universities in Japan, in Korea, in Southeast Asia, with India. Let's maintain a open and a collaborative environment for at least for Asian universities. As Rangan mentioned, Asia has 60% of the population, and it's rising, and it has lots of opportunities. And also, as academia, I think we are the last defender of globalization, right? And the students and the basic research need to be kept free, open as possible.
Well,
but I cannot comment on individual cases because I just don't have this information. Yeah.
All right. So the last 2 or 3 questions is both of you, including me, I guess, is on the global talent movement and strategy. Right? So, the first question is from someone from New Zealand. How will the recruitment of the brightest minds, growing faculty mobility, and the movement of ideas play out geopolitically? Now, in a way, we answered that already. I don't think, for the last hour, we've been discussing this. But now I want to read out the question so that, so we actually address this. Now, the second one, we have addressed a little bit, but not completely. So the question is, even if there could be a reverse brain drain, right, we'll say returnees and so on, from the West, what would Asian universities do to retain talent? Because when they come back, they may find that, it's not their cup of tea, they may go back or they leave. Higher salaries, better research, environment, a lot of entrepreneurial opportunity, what are they in both India and China?
So, Tony, let me
Sure.
Also when I say Asian university, also Australian universities, New Zealand university. Sorry for that, because Australia and New Zealand have been very open. All Asia. If you look at Chinese universities, and including companies, do offer very compelling compensation, right, in total package. So I think it's good to attract talent. I haven't seen a lot of reverse people come back to China and the left. So most of them would choose to come back and stay. I did notice their movement between university and industry. And we actually briefly talked about that before. Some of the professors, they're going to industry for bigger, 10x salary. But also I see people coming from, moving from industry to universities, like myself, and also the people I hired from an institute. So I think that's healthy. Right? People at different career stage, they choose, this is the best for me. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So I'm not worried about that at all.
Rangan, what about retaining talents?
Yeah, I think the key thing that we can offer for retaining talent is about quality of life and opportunities for growth and the overall ecosystem. We cannot match the kind of salaries which would be there in other countries. And so in our educational ecosystem, once we give the freedom and the flexibility, and we have easier way to access research funding and industry linkages, we are working on all of those. But normally people who have come back in faculty and research positions, most of them continue to stay. And some of them do go to industry, but if we want to make this more attractive, I think it's about the overall ecosystem. We have residential campuses, and we have good interaction with bright young minds. So I think that is the opportunity. It's not just about we would not be able to match salaries, and we also don't want to create distortions where people who are here, who are on an equivalent level, are sort of paid less, and so we've not gone down that path. But we can provide additional research.
Let me come to the last question that I have. No, I did 2 online, but let me come to the last one that I have on the pre-collective. We have maybe 5 minutes left. Okay, so here's a utopian question. What would be an ideal global talent chain for humanity? Okay, this is from a US university academic. What would be ideal? I think, Ya-qin, you already mentioned, right? You are for globalization. You want a free flow, right? You want your people to go out.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
So what is ideal for humanity, not just for any one country? You care to comment on that? Both of you.
Yeah, I just think ideally there should not be a national boundary for talent, for technology. It's it's market economy. It's basically rule of law. That would be ideal. People don't have to worry about a visa. When they visit somewhere, they visit somewhere. Right? When they want to exchange ideas, exchange ideas. So I'm an idealist, globalist, and optimist. I think we, despite all the all the concerns, all the tension, in the longer term, I think we're moving into more globalization. And the technology is the defining tool for us to become more global.
Rangan, you have any comment on this?
Yeah, well, I think, if one didn't have boundaries, national boundaries, and everything was free and flow of, I mean, in an ideal situation, but then the problem in that case is that if things were equal, then that would then you can go for that ideal situation. But in a situation where there is inequality, that would create, if you didn't have those boundaries, that would create a lot of distortions. So I think, unfortunately, one can't really move to that ideal. So I think it has to be, I mean, you have to look at local, regional, national, as well as global. And there's no, you just can't go towards a global without looking at, because
yeah, that's true. I agree.
Each
copy another system.
has its own requirements and its things. And so if you just had everyone migrating to places where you already have all the development, then, it's not even ideal globally.
Yeah.
Because you want to create a human ecosystem where, you encourage.
Yeah, I think this is a good way to...
I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about, ideal in 100 years of the direction-wise. Yeah.
But that's a good question for us to reflect. Okay, I don't think the questioner expects a perfect answer. I think it's a good time for us to sum up, because I think we have like 1 or 2 minutes left. I think we cover a lot of ground. I think we certainly touch on many of the aspects of the title, the topic of the discussion. My sense is the world is actually going through big shifts. In the old days, not so long ago, the flow of talent is sort of going more one way. Now it's sort of going both ways. It's sort of multipolar in a way, much more so. So I think in a way, I feel that's good for the world. Because, talent is everywhere, right? As you said, technology doesn't respect national boundaries. And the world's problem also does not respect national boundaries. A lot of them, many of them, climate change is one that many people talk about, how to safeguard, technology like AI that goes across any national boundary. So I think I want to leave this, dialogue in a positive note. I mean, hearing from you guys in 2 of the most populous countries in the world, where you have the most number of talents. I mean, certainly globally speaking, you have the most number of talent. Now the shift is going on, and it sounds like from both of you, it's a positive thing. Certainly from a national point of view, it's positive. But I would present that this is actually good for the world. Okay, so I would encourage that you continue to send talents over the world, to promote this collaboration, and maybe we should reconvene 10 years from now and see how the world has changed over this. Okay, hopefully we have positive news to report. So with this, let me thank you once again, the 2 panelists for agreeing to this. Thank you for the audience who still stay around. Let's anticipate DAO 12 in a few months' time. Thank you very much.
Great.
Max, you have some concluding remarks?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.